Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Just Talking podcast. And guess the fuck what? Hell yeah. Roll the intro.
Hey.
Okay.
I don't want to start over.
No, this is the beginning of it. We stick with it.
Do you not have a plan here? Fuck yeah.
Because of that curiosity.
And that's like a whole lot of it. It isn't necessarily like violence or anything, but there's so much just like not educating.
Kind of reopen the can of worms.
But you just get sucked in on like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening.
And that's just talking for the...
Okay, yeah, I totally made an intro just in time for the most exciting month of all, Pride. As I said in the past couple podcasts, this whole month of Pride, I will be putting out a bunch of video, probably a vlog, because I do go to Pride tomorrow, but just a bunch of different podcasts on people's journey, story, tips, opinions, just a bunch of LGBTQ stuff this month, so I'm super pumped to put that out. I actually just recorded Penelope's that I'm going to be putting up right after this. I think at the end I mentioned that I haven't even recorded this, and I will admit that this own podcast I have recorded multiple times, and I deleted it. It didn't end up, it's kind of hard. I'm not really sure why, but it's just a weird thing to talk about and analyze. But I'm here to talk about my pansexuality. I'm here to talk about my journey, my story, and I guess just some advice that I would give to anybody struggling to discover their own sexuality, whether they are closeted and they're nervous about telling people, or if they're really still on the journey. I will just jump into it. I guess I kind of want to just start on I guess when I kind of the basic timeline of like when I decided to call myself a pansexual. I did from a very young age. I will admit I am a little bit different. I feel like I'm a little bit different than some of the people around, or like my friends, especially like my close friend group, except for in high school I had a gay friend who was he knew very young as well, but I was kind of in the same boat. I realized really early on, like it was probably second grade, it was honestly second grade, a girl in my class I realized I had feelings for, and I didn't know who to acknowledge it to. And so I think I didn't really make a big deal about it. But in about second grade was when I kind of realized, I was like, okay, I have crushes on girls. I don't know if I would establish it as a crush. I don't know if I just knew that I liked girls. It was a very weird feeling to realize as a second grader. But I mean, I am able to look back at that, and I literally remember the girl I was totally crushing on. Not gonna say her name. I just had a weird feeling. I've recorded this podcast multiple times, and in some of them I've said her name, some of them I haven't, but I don't think I need to. In actually about third grade was when I joined swim team, and through most of my life at that point I had been very much a tomboy type of figure. I wore jeans and the same hoodie, I'm pretty sure, all through third grade, and that was honestly probably the end of third grade. I remember this being asked about it. It was really strange. I had multiple people the end of third grade and like beginnings of fourth grade, and it continued on. It definitely continued on. I remember as I got older, but it was never in ridicule. People questioned me, not on liking girls, but if I was a transgender, because I was such a non-girly girl type of person. I was not with the frills, and it was very typical. I was very into sports and only had guy friends, and was very much one of the dudes, and I had a really weird type of nobody ever actually people did make fun of me, which I think is crazy, but it was never for that. I think because I was okay at sports, or I wasn't like the other girls. I guess I got respect for that, maybe, I don't know, but I look back at that and I remember being like crazy bullied up until about 4th grade, and that's a whole nother story. But not for that reason, not for anybody ever thinking that I was gay or transgender, because I was always questioned if they were like, do you want to be a boy, was what the question was, and I would always be like, what? And they're like, because there are things that, like, do you feel like you're a boy? Like, that's literally where my first exposure to that culture was. I think for a long time, a reason also why I didn't really know that or like, not that I know, or I don't know how to put it. I guess another thing on being so young and realizing really young that my feelings for girls and guys could be the same, I didn't really know how to go about it, considering that I was pretty openly like boy crazy, but I didn't know how to go about being gay, if that makes sense. There were no examples. I was obviously raised super religious. I have a whole freaking series on Mormonism. I mean, it wasn't thrown in my face that it was bad, but I mean, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't until probably, I moved, when I was really confronted with it just being thrown in my face that it was not okay. I moved to Utah from Colorado in about 7th grade. And to be honest with you, I didn't really, I knew a couple of gay people in Colorado. They start middle school there a little bit earlier than kids in Utah. So I went through 4 fucking years of middle school, not 3, 4. Goddamn. That was the most frustrating thing ever. So I was literally on my last year of middle school when I moved to Utah. And so it was like that was a really hard point in my life, just because I wasn't exposed to gay people really in Colorado. I knew of them. None of them, honestly. Maybe privately they were, but to all my knowledge, whenever I talked to them, it was a very celebrated thing. It was really cool. Everyone was very into the idea of having a gay best friend, that type of thing. So, it was very, I feel like it was very shown to me stereotypically, so it's why it took me a long time to even look into the culture more, and it wasn't until I moved to Utah and about 7th grade, you're like 13 at that time, I believe, and that was when I moved here, it was kind of a crazy culture shock. I went from, I knew from a very young age, I knew I did not want to be baptized. I knew I didn't want to be a part of the church. And so I moved from being with, like a handful of Mormons. They weren't like other places where there's only like 2 or 3. There was like a handful of us. It was a pretty good population. But it was a melting pot. But I went from that to absolutely no diversity at all. And it was absolutely, obviously so apparent that if you identified your sexuality straight up, you had issues. You were looked at as if you had issues. You were the weird kid. And so I was really intimidated by that. And that was also the first time that I aggressively was told by the church, at least, that it was wrong, and it was really wrong, and that I was gonna go to hell. Basically, I learned that I was gonna go to hell. And I mean, I knew I was gonna go to hell because I didn't follow any of the rules or plan on following any of the rules. You can thank movies for that. But I vowed to myself really early on that I wasn't gonna be ignorant, and I wanted to experience it all. And so that meant not following the rules of the church. And that also, I mean, I didn't realize for the longest time that being gay and a part of the church was, until recently, but it was deemed as something to, like, the equality of murder. If you were gay, you would be basically, like, you're straight to hell. There's not much said. And people fucking hate you. Like, that's the other thing, is that not only are you gay, people hate you. Like, I saw people come out to their families and, like, this religion tore apart their family because their parents couldn't put aside that. Like, I hate that mentality of love the sinner, hate the sin. But it's that type of mentality that gets those parents to just open their mind just a little bit to being like, yes, this is my child. And then, like, even though they start with that mentality, you can always change. Everyone can change. Anybody can change their mentality. And so I fucking can't stand it. But, you know, like, there were a lot of people that their parents didn't even consider having that mentality. They didn't even, their own child, they wanted nothing to do with. And that was really scary to see. It happened really young too, especially going to Lone Peak. I did realize, you know, really early on that I liked girls, but I did learn what a bisexual was, but I did not want to identify as one for a couple reasons, and I'll go over a couple of those. But one, I was just really uneducated, and I only knew the basics of bisexuals, like both boys and girls, and I just felt really, really weird with that. For some reason, for me, when I heard that definition, it didn't define the way I looked at my sexuality in, like, looking for a partner or, like, a relationship. I was like, that's just very blandly, it's just, I'm looking for two genders type in my head. It's just, I feel like my thinking has evolved, but at that time that was very much like, that just, I don't know if I really, you know, if there's more to it, or if it really is just like, I just like girls and guys, that's just what it is. And then another big thing behind it was I knew a lot of people that came out as bisexual and got a lot of backlash, and not the type of backlash that you would get as if you came out straight up gay or lesbian. They would get the backlash of, oh, so you're just a slut, you're just a hoe, you just want to be promiscuous, like you don't fucking care, that type of attitude. And that was really just awful to me. That one, like, it's an ongoing joke, it's funny sometimes, you know, sometimes you can throw those jokes in context and shit like that, but, you know, when the basic mass of population throws that in your face and says, you know, that's the reason why you fucking suck, it's kind of hard to come out and be like, yeah, I feel this way. And to be honest with you, I am really happy that I was really hesitant for the longest time on claiming my sexuality. So, I mean, I was learning about that was probably about early 7th and 8th grade type of shit. That was kind of what was going on. Sophomore year, the end of sophomore year to early of junior year was when I first got in a real relationship, more than just hooking up, more than just making out, more than just messing around with another girl. But I got into a relationship with a girl that was very complicated and definitely not handled the way that it should have been. But I mean, we definitely learned and grew from it completely. But during that time, I was confronted by a lot of people. I was definitely a lot more open with it than she was at the time. She was very closeted and kind of trying to figure it out, and I kind of had to respect that. But I was still very open with the fact that I was like, okay, but this is happening, but it was a very big concern of mine that I didn't know what my sexuality was, and it freaked me out a lot because I got confronted about it so much. And like even my two best friends at the time, like just like at that time they were full on just like, are you this, are you guys this, like just wanting answers to obvious confusion, and it was completely justifiable and fair. So I remember confiding in my gay friend at the time, just sitting down and telling him how absolutely just like sick I was of everyone just in my face and being like, what are you? What do you identify as? If you're dating a girl, you're a lesbian. Like, you must not like guys anymore. Like, what happened? Blah, blah, blah. And just kind of freaking out and venting to him. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I hope people realize, and something that also Penelope touched on in her interview or podcast that comes out, but he looked at me and he was like, don't worry about what other people are thinking, what they're questioning you on, because it's a journey. You don't just wake up one day and decide what you are. This is an absolute journey. And that completely just put every kind of issue at ease, even though at that time it was definitely very apparent he was closeted for a long time, but he was very out at that point. It wasn't a secret when we had that chat. And so I found a lot of comfort in someone who I knew had really, I don't think he had really established that about himself, but like he knew it was a very honest truth. It was really just comforting to know that someone who really, found that truth about themselves, it was willing to acknowledge that they didn't just wake up and be like, okay, I know this about myself. I full on know this about myself. And that it's not really anybody's fucking business to worry about that. I think it's really interesting that for a long time, a big fear of mine of also exploring my sexuality, or even wanting to look into it more, besides the fact of like religion terrifying me, was the fact that I had been in heterosexual relationships the entirety of everything. I mean, as I said, I hooked up and messed around with girls and had crushes on them, but I mean, I didn't have a real relationship with a girl until that time in high school, and even then it was very down low, secret type of thing. But it was very different, but for some reason I was really scared of the ridicule and backlash I would get from the LGBTQ plus community, the community that I wanted to be a part of so badly. I was really terrified of the backlash I would get of if I just declared something about myself because I dated a girl, and everyone was like, well, no, you date one girl out of the handful of guys you've been serious with, so like, what does that say? So that was something that held me back for a little bit, and something that I hope anybody listening to can just say fuck off. Literally fuck off to anybody. Any fucking buddy who says that to you, whether they're in the community or not, because they have no right. They have absolutely no fucking right to judge that based on the amount of people that you've been serious with, or you've hooked up with, or if you've hooked up with more guys than girls, or more girls than guys, blah fucking blah. They have no right in saying that. It's a why does anybody get to be the gay police, if that makes sense? You know, if you're, as I just said, if you're on this fucking journey, this most stressful and like absolutely terrifying journey, it would be absolutely just like heartbreaking for you to you know, like kind of be ready to explore it and then have someone discredit you in that type of way. So I really do hope anybody listening to this that is really like nervous about that, because I mean I still go through that fear, but I'm definitely more outspoken on being like, okay, but why do you get to say that to me? I'm very more on the supporting other people to fight that, because it really did scare me for the longest time to just know that because I dated more guys, like I felt discredited, and really, but it's not my fault. It's not my fault that I dated more guys, because I was still trying to understand how to even date a girl. I never even had examples of that. I'm still trying to figure that the fuck out, you know? But I'm definitely getting ahead of myself. So I figured out that I was pansexual at the end of my junior year of high school, and I was in a heterosexual relationship. Ayo. And it started out as a fucking joke, which is really funny. But it was the first time that I heard of what a pansexual was. And so it was the end of junior year, right? Yeah, is probably when I heard the term, and it was because June was coming up and everyone was talking about Pride Month, and I did not realize, because of my Mormon ass. You also do have to realize that the way that I was raised, and just with religion playing that role in my life, though the church didn't really scare me and I was still doing what I wanted to do, I didn't want to cause that type of contention, because I saw how it completely destroyed people. And so yeah, I told the other girls and I made jokes, and I was pretty obvious about it, but I also was really terrified to straight up just say, yes, I'm going to hell. I accept the fact that you deem me as someone who will end up in hell, and that is lesser than you. That's how it felt. And so because of that, I didn't have any exposure to it, and so I was very sheltered from it. I was very naive and confused and scared. I just had the basic understanding in my own body, in my own mind, that I thought of girls and guys as the same. Like, I like them the same. I could have the same type of relationship or have the same type of connection with anybody. And I just had that basic understanding, and I kind of had to run with it. And so junior year, at the end of junior year, my best friend Penelope, she turns to me and she just straight up was like, "You're a pansexual. I figured out what you were. You're a pansexual. You don't have to worry about it anymore." And I was absolutely fucking confused. I had no idea what a pansexual was. I didn't really get it. She didn't also explain it to me at first. She just kept saying it at me, which I thought was really funny. She just kept repeating it and was like, "This is what you are," and I was like, "I don't know what that means." And so finally, after Until I finally got her to stop repeating it and be like, you're sexually attracted to pans, and like all the dumb, basic, stereotypical jokes. I looked it up on Urban Dictionary, and I read this definition. Pansexuality. One who can love sexuality in many forms, like bisexuality, but even more fluid. A pansexual person can not only love the traditional male and female genders, but also transgender, androgynous, and gender fluid people. I read that definition, and I think that was probably, and I fucking get it, it's the Urban Dictionary, but that was the way I was describing how I was feeling for years. Like, that was just the most relieving and like weirdly funniest moment of my life, because it happened as a joke, as Penelope just searching around. We're getting ready for Pride. I'm in a super straight ass relationship, and she's like, you're pansexual. And from there, you know, when Pride came around, and Pansexual Day came on, like, she made me a cake, and it was really funny, and it was really cute. But it was a really relieving point, I think, is why I found it really funny. Because I was just relieved that, I did just read that day the basic, you know, definition of what pansexual was on Urban Dictionary, but that basic definition was literally the basics of how I had felt, not because I didn't look at, I just felt bisexuality was so constricting, and I felt that I could have a relationship with anybody I came across with, and it was very forward. I feel like I was very forward in my thinking as youth. Probably very naive and just wanting anybody to be my friend. I do enjoy inclusivity, if that makes sense. But that is like the basics of like my story of when I really like figured out when I was pansexual. And then from there I've obviously continued to discover it more, and become more a part of the LGBTQ plus community is like my next thing on my list. I think so. When I graduated high school, I was still in a straight relationship for a while, for like 2 years after that. So it was a while to just kind of have to not like put the discovering on hold, but kind of put like I feel like it's very a big step to openly date like that, because I found that title of pansexuality when I was in a straight relationship, and so declaring that you're pansexual in a straight relationship does feel very different than declaring it when you're single and able to be like, okay, like I can really look into this, more than being like, okay, I have crushes on girls and I want relationships with girls or just other people. I don't know why I keep saying girls, but it's just easier to just say the opposite sex, but just people. I want to analyze my relationships. I want to see, like, I know I would be able to have just amazing relationships with specific people, you know, those type of things. And looking at it like that, it's a lot different, and it's a little overwhelming. Online dating is shit, so that doesn't help. But the journey has not stopped, I will say. I'm learning still a lot more about myself, and as I'm exploring it, it's been super funny, I guess. I just think it's funny to discover something about yourself that really does make up like a serious like part of your foundation. Like, definitely, it's like one of those things when you like realize your religion, you know, when you realize your sexuality is just one thing that, like, okay, I'm relieved that I have a title, but I'm happy that I went through that, because now I'm so fucking different. And now, because I have this title, I can grow and become better because of it, because now you have like something to guide you. That sounds super weird, and it sounds like I don't know if that even makes any sense, but that's how it makes sense in my head, or how I'm gonna put it. But that's like my basic story, and basically like my basic journey of finding my sexuality, and how I feel, I guess. I definitely do want to reiterate that it's a fucking journey. You're not gonna wake up overnight and understand your feelings. Like, you're just not. It's gonna be a hard journey, and it's probably gonna fucking suck, and it's gonna be really emotionally draining. That's also something I realized, but it's something that I wouldn't take back, because I am such a better, stronger person because of it. And I also, the last note that I want to put out there is, like, literally do not give a fuck about what other people will think about you. If you're not sure, I also want to put this as in, like, if you're straight and want to, like, participate in Pride or support gay people, fucking do it. I, like, do not understand. There's, like, this really weird fear from people who are straight that, like, have really big issues on, like, celebrating and being a part of this. Supposedly, we're supposed to be a really inclusive, environment. It's the LGBTQ plus community. We're supposed to come out and support each other, and so I always advocate for more support. And so because of that, if you really truly want to not only be a part of the support team, but also, like, feel supported, I honestly, like, would really just not give a fuck what other people think. It's your own decision. It's your own journey. It's your own life. And I don't think, people outside of, your inner circle, your family, your really close friends, they don't really have a right to judge you in any way, especially at the time. If you tell your close friends and their family, and you find out, they're not supporting you, then you should probably, you might want to take a step back and either figure out why and then go from there. That type of situation. But I just highly suggest ignore the fear that you get from the judgment that you're nervous you're gonna get, because it really did hold me back for a while, and I really wish it didn't, and I really wish I wasn't so self-conscious about it, because it's just an amazing thing to know about myself. And so that's my story. That's all I have to say. So keep an eye out for the rest of these podcasts. And also, please, like, reach out to me if you have something to say. I mean, I'm not just going to be talking about, you don't even have to be gay. If you have thoughts on the community, if you want to ask also, like, questions, I mean, you might as well. I don't know what type of questions you would ask, but yeah, feel free to leave your thoughts and comments below. Feel free, if you want to share your story, to let me know, or if you just want to be on the podcast in general, I'd love to have you on. So yeah, tune in next podcast. Talk to y'all later. See ya.